The last day. It was the last day of school at Riverbend High. The class of 1995 was set to graduate, and excitement buzzed in the air. The seniors had been anticipating this day for years. No more teachers, no more homework, no more school. As the day went on, yearbooks were being signed, goodbyes were exchanged, and promises of never forgetting each other were made. Among the group of students was Anna, a quiet but well-liked girl who mostly kept to herself. She had been looking forward to graduation, but not for the same reasons as the others. Anna had a secret, a darkness that had been growing inside her for years. Her friends noticed her withdrawal over the past year, but no one really pressed her about it. After all, everyone was stressed with graduation looming, and they figured she was just dealing with it in her own way. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of their high school years, students poured out of classrooms, yelling and celebrating. Anna stood outside by herself, watching everyone as they left the building for the last time. She felt a strange sense of dread, like something was about to happen. She dismissed it as graduation jitters and began to walk home. Riverbend High was an old school built in the 1920s with a reputation for strange occurrences. Some claimed it was haunted, that strange sounds would echo through the hallways after hours. Over the years, janitors had quit, claiming they saw things in the building that couldn't be explained, but no one took it seriously. After all, schools always had ghost stories, right? Anna's walk home took her by the woods that bordered the town. There were many rumors about those woods. Some claimed they were cursed. People had gone missing there before, but no one could ever prove it was anything more than just getting lost. Still, kids avoided the area if they could. But not Anna. The woods were a shortcut home, and she'd walked that path hundreds of times. As she made her way into the trees, the air seemed to change, growing heavier, as if the atmosphere itself were alive. A strange wind blew through the trees, rustling the leaves in a way that seemed to whisper. Anna paused, listening. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, but she couldn't make out the words. Something felt wrong. She quickened her pace, hoping to shake the unease that was crawling up her spine. The whispers faded, replaced by the sounds of twigs snapping behind her. Anna froze, her heart racing. She slowly turned around, expecting to see an animal, but there was nothing. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely audible over the wind. Silence. She turned back around and began walking faster, her mind racing with thoughts of the missing people, the strange things she'd heard about the woods. She tried to rationalize it. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was just some of the younger kids playing a prank. Maybe it was just her mind playing tricks. But as she continued, the feeling of being watched only intensified. The trees loomed larger, their branches seeming to bend toward her as if they were alive. And then she saw it. At first, it was just a shadow, a figure standing between the trees up ahead, motionless, watching her. Anna stopped, her breath catching in her throat. The figure didn't move. She squinted, trying to make out any details, but it was just a dark humanoid shape, standing completely still. "Who's there?" she yelled, her voice trembling. No response. She took a step back, her heart pounding, but the figure remained still. Panic began to rise in her chest. She thought about turning around and running back to the school, but something told her not to. It felt like a trap, like whatever that thing was wanted her to run. She forced herself to keep walking, her eyes locked on the figure, hoping it would vanish as she got closer, that it was just a trick of the light. But as she neared, it didn't go away. It didn't move, didn't shift. It was real. Anna's breath came in short gasps as she walked past the figure, keeping it in her peripheral vision. As she did, she could feel its eyes on her. Even though it had no visible face, she could feel it watching her, like it was waiting for something, but it didn't move. She didn't stop until she was well past the figure, almost at the edge of the woods. She felt a slight sense of relief as she saw the clearing that led to the road, but that relief was short-lived. Just as she was about to step out of the woods, she heard it, a soft, almost inaudible whisper coming from directly behind her. "Anna!" She froze, her blood turning to ice. How did it know her name? Slowly, she turned around, but the figure was gone. The woods were silent again, but the air was still heavy, oppressive. Without waiting another second, she ran. She didn't stop running until she reached the road, her lungs burning, her legs aching. She looked back one last time, half expecting to see the figure standing at the edge of the woods, but there was nothing, just trees swaying gently in the breeze. When she finally got home, she slammed the door behind her and collapsed against it, trying to catch her breath. She was safe now, but that night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching her. She tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw that figure, standing there, watching her. Over the next few days, Anna tried to move on, to forget what had happened. She convinced herself it was just her imagination, the stress of graduation getting to her. But the dreams wouldn't stop. Every night, she saw the figure closer and closer, until one night it was standing at the foot of her bed. She woke up screaming, her heart pounding in her chest, but the room was empty. Still, the feeling of being watched never went away. She started noticing strange things around her house. Objects moved from where she'd left them. Doors that she knew she had closed were suddenly open. One evening, as she was walking through her house, she saw it again. The figure standing in the corner of her living room watching her. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, its faceless gaze locked on her. Anna backed away slowly, her hands shaking. She grabbed her phone and called her best friend Sarah in a panic, begging her to come over. Sarah, worried about Anna's mental state, rushed over, but by the time she arrived, the figure was gone. Anna tried to explain what had been happening, but Sarah didn't believe her. "It's just stress," she said. "You've been through a lot with graduation. You just need to relax." But Anna knew it wasn't stress. Something had followed her out of those woods, and it wasn't going to leave her alone. That night, Anna didn't sleep at all. She stayed up, watching the corners of her room, waiting for the figure to return. And it did. Just before dawn, she saw it standing in the doorway of her bedroom. This time it spoke. "Come back," it whispered. "Come back to the woods." Anna couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her keys and ran out of the house, driving as fast as she could back to the school. She didn't know why, but she felt like the only way to end this was to go back, to confront whatever it was that had followed her. When she reached the woods, the sun was just beginning to rise. The trees were bathed in an eerie orange light, casting long shadows on the ground. She stepped into the woods, her heart racing, the feeling of dread returning tenfold. As she walked deeper into the trees, the whispers returned, louder this time, more insistent. She could hear them all around her, but she couldn't make out what they were saying. And then she saw it again. The figure, standing in the clearing ahead of her, waiting. "Why are you doing this?" she screamed. "What do you want from me?" The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, watching her. In a fit of desperation, Anna picked up a rock and threw it at the figure, but it passed right through it, hitting the ground with a dull thud. The figure began to move toward her, slowly, deliberately. Anna turned and ran, the whispers growing louder, more frantic. She could feel the figure behind her, chasing her, closing in. She ran faster than she ever had before, her lungs burning, her legs screaming in pain. But no matter how fast she ran, the figure was always right behind her. Finally, she burst out of the woods and into the road, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. The whispers stopped, and when she looked back, the figure was gone. But she knew it wasn't over. Anna never returned to those woods again. She moved away after graduation, hoping that distance would keep the figure at bay. But no matter where she went, she always felt it watching her, always saw it in the corners of her vision. And every night, just before she fell asleep, she would hear it whispering her name.